I've never met anyone who doesn't like karaoke. Whether you're singing or just listening to others sing, karaoke is sure to draw a crowd and give life to any party. In this video, I'm going to explain how to use a pro mixer like the Behringer 1204 to get the best results, especially in a home setting. Now, you could spend the money on a sophisticated karaoke system, but check out the price. Not to mention the fact that it might not include all the songs that you want, and you're also limited to 2 microphones. In addition, you will still need some sort of amplification or speaker system, as this system does not come with that. My personal experience is that these off-the-shelf karaoke systems do not have the best microphones, as they tend to have too much bass with no ability to adjust the microphones at all. This means that the performers don't sound like themselves, and this can cause all sorts of problems. But using your smart TV, the YouTube app, and a Pro Mixer, you can have a much better experience at a fraction of the price of an off-the-shelf karaoke system. Let's dive in and see how this is done. At the back of your smart TV, there is a connection called a Toslink port. Basically, it's for connecting a fiber optic audio cable. The audio from your TV is basically converted to light signals using a laser, and with a Toslink cable, you can feed that audio into a soundbar or AV receiver. A word of caution: a laser light can damage your eye, so never look directly into a Toslink port or an active Toslink cable. Now, if your TV is mounted on the wall, be careful. The last thing we want is to put a sharp bend on a Toslink cable. Not only will it damage the optical fiber that carries the audio signal, it will also damage the outer layer that protects the fiber. As a workaround, you can buy a right-angle Toslink adapter, which allows you to make that sharp bend, and it also swivels in a complete circle, giving you the ability to route the cable inside or outside the wall, down to a credenza or wherever the equipment might be located. The next thing you're going to need is a digital to analog decoder, and basically you're going to plug the other end of the Toslink cable into the input side of the converter. Also, make sure that the switch on the side is set to the SPDIF position and not the coax position. You will also need a 1/4-inch stereo to RCA stereo cable. The RCA end of the cable will connect to these RCA ports on the digital converter, and the 1/4-inch connectors can be plugged into ports 7 and 8 on the Behringer mixer. Ports 7 and 8 are controlled by the same slider for stereo input. You could also use ports 5 and 6, as they are set up the same way as ports 7 and 8. Now, what if you already have the Toslink cable from your TV going to a soundbar or a surround sound receiver/amplifier? You might not want to disconnect the Toslink cable each time you plan to do karaoke. So in that case, you might want to go with a digital converter that has pass-through, like the one shown on the screen that I have used on several occasions. This is the big brother to the converter I showed earlier. So on the right side we have the inputs, which means that the Toslink cable from your TV would connect here on the optical in. On the left side you would connect another Toslink cable to the optical out, right here. And the other end of that second cable would now plug into the Toslink port on your soundbar or surround sound receiver. So now you understand why we call this a pass-through. The Toslink signal passes through the converter and goes to the soundbar, but it also does something else. It takes a stereo signal from that digital stream and provides an analog output via the RCA ports right here. This is the analog output we'll be feeding to the mixer as described before. Please remember that in order for this to work, this switch right here must be in the optical position since we're using a Toslink or fiber optic input. The next step is to connect the mixer's output to the auxiliary input of the soundbar. For that, we need a dual XLR female cable with a 1/8 inch or 3.5 mm stereo plug on the other end. Bear in mind that when I say 1/8 inch or 3.5 mm plug, I'm referring to the exact same plug. The only difference is that 1/8 of an inch refers to the old imperial system of measurement, while 3.5 mm refers to the metric system. But it's the same tiny plug that we often see on headphone cables, which we will now plug into the auxiliary input of the soundbar. So let's grab the soundbar's remote and turn on the soundbar. Now let's turn on the smart TV, open the YouTube app and play a karaoke song. Just to be sure, we want to make sure that on the soundbar's remote we press the TV button to make sure it's using the Toslink input. You should now hear audio coming from the soundbar. Note, if you did not have a soundbar or receiver before, you will need to go into your TV settings and set the audio output to optical, as I'll show in this next video. Hey, so basically what I'm going to do now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to show you how to set up the audio out on your smart TV so that we can get that digital to analog converter sending the audio through the left and right RCA connectors to your mixer. So on my TV, which is an LG Smart TV, I'm going to press the little sprocket button or cog, whatever you want to call it, and basically that will get me into setup mode. And I'm going to go down to audio, and my output is already set to optical, so I don't need to change that. But let's say you were using HDMI ARC, and basically with HDMI ARC, the audio from your smart TV goes to your receiver or your sound bar, and that's how you get your audio, your surround sound coming from your smart TV. So basically, if that's what you're using, all depending on your setup, or who knows, maybe you're using a Bluetooth device to watch your smart TV. So maybe if you had a Bluetooth device connected, you just come here and you just change it, and then you find optical. And then once you find optical, you select that and you're good to go. Now, let's go to all settings. And the reason why we're going to go to all settings is that I want to show you some additional things that you might need to do. If we go to additional settings under sound, if you start to play the music and you're not getting those blue lights on the digital to analog converter, you might want to go down here and change the sound type from auto to pass through. If you're still not getting the blue lights, then go back here and go to PCM. But ideally, you want to leave it on auto, and then it will automatically output the sound in the digital format that it gets it in, and then the digital to analog converter will pick it up and output it to the RCA connectors. So the key thing to look for in a digital to analog converter are those two blue lights. If you don't see those blue lights, it means that it's not able to convert the digital sound to RCA analog. So play with these. As a last resort, you can try PCM, and usually that should fix most problems. But for the best sound, you want to leave it on auto or pass through. But if the blue lights don't come on, you go to PCM, and that should be it. So I'm going to leave it on auto because I know my system works fine at home, and that should be it. So once you do that, blue lights come on, you should be getting sound, and then you're good to go with the audio going into the mixer. Now, assuming that you're getting sound, let's press this button on the remote so that we can go to the auxiliary input on the sound bar. As I explained in my first video, the mixer should be off at this point, and all the sliders should be at their lowest point. So now that we're ready to use a mixer, you can power it on. Give it a second or two to stabilize, then move the master volume up to 0 decibels or unity. Now we can start to slowly move the slider up for input 7 and 8 until we begin to hear the music at a comfortable level. If you're using a surround sound receiver instead of a sound bar, you will need a different cable coming from the mixer's main output. That cable will be a dual XLR female to RCA stereo. The RCA end would connect to any one of these RCA inputs at the back of the receiver. Using the receiver's remote, you can go into setup and rename that input to Karaoke. Whatever you do, do not use the phono input. That's specifically for players that use the old vinyl discs. So now that you're getting the music via the mixer, let's make sure the other sliders are at their lowest level, and then you can plug your microphones into the mixer. Now, I found this very nice wireless microphone system on Amazon and I simply could not believe it when I saw the price. But it had a 4.5-star rating, so I bought it, and let me tell you, I was not disappointed. Each microphone has its own separate channel and its own XLR output, which means I can connect each one to a separate microphone input on the mixer. Now the microphones all come color coded at the bottom, but unfortunately I had already used some of the colored windsocks in a different system, so I had to change two of them. Green became purple and blue became pink. Windsocks are not absolutely necessary, but for me I find it very useful in quickly identifying microphones and in knowing who is using which microphone. Here you can see I've also color coded the frequency display at the front of the wireless microphone system. When a microphone is on, this RF or radio frequency light should come on. If it's not on, then I can ask the person to turn their microphone on. If the light begins to flicker, I can tell them that their battery is getting weak. Now this setup is ideal for a karaoke bar, a restaurant, or a home where you have someone who can work the mixer. But what if you just want the benefit of having more than two microphones and some quality ones at that, without the need to be constantly monitoring the mixer? That's where this other mixer comes in. It's a rack-mountable mixer that you could perhaps hide away in a closet somewhere and thus prevent idle hands from changing the settings. What I also like is the fact that the microphone inputs are XLRs. However, you probably caught on to the fact that there are only 3 XLR inputs, whereas the wireless microphone system I'm using has 4 microphones. Not a problem though. For the 4th microphone, I used an RCA analog input, which meant using a single XLR female to RCA stereo cable, and I connected that to input 3, which is an RCA input. The music is fed in through input 1, and the main output uses quarter-inch sockets, one for each channel. For that, I had to use a stereo quarter-inch to stereo RCA cable, which I fed into a surround sound receiver using one of the analog RCA inputs. After that, it was just a question of adjusting the sound levels so that neither the music nor the vocals drown each other out. And of course, hard surfaces reflect sound very easily. So apart from doing an ear test, I also recorded myself and played it back so that I could figure out what adjustments needed to be made. Take a listen. When the marimba rhythm starts to play, dance with me, make me sway, like a lazy ocean hugs the shore. Hold me close, sway me more, like a flower bending in the breeze. Bend with me, sway with ease. When we dance, you have a way with me. Stay with me, sway with me. As you heard in the recording, the room sounds like an echo chamber, and that is due to 2 things. First of all, I had all 5 speakers playing, including the 2 in the ceiling above me. With so many hard surfaces, that means a lot of sound waves bouncing about. I'm planning on turning off those speakers for karaoke and only using the front speakers, and I'm also going to look into ways I can minimize the echo electronically. But for now, it's acceptable, given the circumstances. In this video, I've used some common setups to explain the topic, and I made references to cables and other devices that some of you might never have heard of before. There are links in the description below to all the items I've mentioned, and if you need help in designing your system, I've left a link in the description below to my company website. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, and see you in the next video.